Hey, it's Mike. Haven't posted for a while, so I guess I better, vlog out a little bit since, although it's the same things I've been talking about, because things haven't really changed much. People are saying the same things, kind of. I watched the election the other night, uh, and the day after that, there was unity. So it's as much as the press wants to look for division, the the traditional and progressive factions are focusing on unity and getting together to take for Congress. So, which is the right thing to do. So let's talk about today's issues. So, yeah, Trump's afraid of assassination. That's a good thing because he's in danger, I'm sure. Here's the thing about the war in Iran. Um, the U.S. and Israel won, and they you know we joined because Trump goes with the last person he talked to, or he goes with Israel. It's actually more, In fact, even if his staff had like talked to him about it, or the experts, they would have, they'd say don't talk to Iran. Well, he's got dominionist of Secretary of State and Vice President who believe that end time stuff. So, speaking of astrology, that that it's the time is now right to boost Israel. So rather than saying no, let's not poke the world with a stick. Let's decapitate the Iranian regime, and they did, and that was the aim of the war. We succeeded on the war the day that those missiles hit target. Um, and now Iran needs to control the Gulf. As I'm sure there are people who are like attacking ships with going, let's just do that because we have to have revenge over the killing of the Ayatollah. No, you don't, because it's hurting yourself. You're hurting yourselves. You know, the U.S. has oil. You're not hurting the U.S., Iran. You're just not. You're making oil prices go higher so that shale can be pumped profitably out of the Canadian and Permian basins and North Dakota. It's a boon to U.S. oil people. Which is this essential beating heart of MAGA. I mean, yeah, it's also good for the raising prices is also good for those of us who would be glad to get rid of oil. Because if you raise the prices, people will start to notice that maybe EVs might be a better thing with new renewables or small reactors. Small reactors are now there's one active, or one has passed critical mass, and it's small modular nuclear reactors will take over the funding of not only data centers but of transportation eventually. Uh, Tethered electric vehicles will put the Middle East out of business, essentially, except for plastics. And in that case, the plastic factory should probably move to the Gulf. Um, Iran should worry about not should worry about making plastic parts or figuring out how to get plastics over to China, or just taking better to have people go to the Middle East to work than to make the Chinese peasants work like slaves, because they've largely succumbed, or a lot of Chinese people have succumbed to COVID, and there weren't as many as we thought there were, according to realistic things. So, yeah, manufacturing should move to Africa and the Middle East with local oil products, rather than you know rather than stay in China, and really not rather than coming here for the most part, um, because we're not increasing either as far as our demographics go. Um, so and we've got plenty of people doing oil, which will eventually become plastic. So which we ship overseas. But yeah, Iran needs to control its hotheads, um, because if they don't, they're shooting themselves in the foot. You know, it's a lot to say we're going to close the Gulf and then actually close the Gulf and realize who's hurting themselves. So yeah, if they want to make Islam suffer, you know, I can't stop them. So, okay, now let's go to the East Wing, shall we? Here's the thing: building under the East Wing was the plan. Biden would have done the same thing because we needed to have under the East Wing, a bunker, an operations center. What they have now is crap. Uh, so yeah, to have a seat of government under the White House, rather than the putting the president in the air is a dubious thing. It's great if you're doing a nuclear war from the sky, but that's probably not going to happen. So, and it's a lot cheaper instead of building another command center. Um, to It's a lot cheaper to just put something under the East Wing, especially since terrorism. You can't that's a long lead time if you're dealing with terrorism to actually have to go to Andrews Air Force Base, launch from Andrews Air Force Base, and pray to God that there isn't a terrorist around Andrews Air Force Base to shoot down Air Force One. Okay? It's not sustainable in the world of drones and shoulder-mounted weapons to have the president go from the White House to Andrews in harm's way. You need something under the East, where the East Wing used to be. It was funded. Putting a ballroom on top of it was a misdirection that people then let out, which was of dubious wisdom. It's a story, and we'd have a First Amendment, and the story got out, but it would have been better if it hadn't. Okay, and I'm sure somebody leaked it to take it out, take the pressure off of Trump, but that wasn't good for the country to do that. It really wasn't. A nice when you locate the seat of the emergency seat of government anywhere, it should be quiet. Now it's less of a good idea now that people know where it is, except unless it's really impenetrable, and I think it mostly is, or will be. So, but yeah, the fact that either the White House or the media let that out, not a good thing. But maybe they should stop it now and build it someplace else. But the White House grounds is a perfect place for it. So, especially if it's against terrorism, and if it's against terrorism, it's probably not going to be a bad place for it either. I mean, they really can't get to an underground bunker. So, now what else? We continue to hear about hair, hands, and spouse on Trump. He's got a thing on the back of his head where they had to do skull surgery and reduce the size and stitch it back up, and nothing can grow back there, and it's just uncouth. It's sad that his own niece would talk about that, because she should know better. I mean, it's just like, you don't make fun of your uncle because of a physical disability. You don't. It's uncouth. As much as Mary lets the cat out of the bag on some things, join in the, oh my God, it's his hands and its hair. That's just, I had the opportunity to have an IV right here, and it would have turned it red. This is where they find a vein on Trump. That's why it's red, blue. He's getting an 80-year-old getting medical attention should not be a cause for for ridicule. They wouldn't have done that to Kennedy. They wouldn't have done it to Roosevelt. They shouldn't do it to Trump. So, also, take court packing off the table, please. Take the filibuster off the table, getting rid of it. That's why we have the judges we do. Because some Democrat thought, oh, let's get rid of the filibuster. Idiot. We got the court because of all those people who said, we need to get rid of the filibuster. No, we didn't. We have Dobbs because we got rid of the filibuster, okay? So quit talking about it. Maybe go to 55. The government should function. A 55 vote cloture is probably a good thing. 51, no. 55 is enough of a margin, that if you have a really good margin, you can tell the people in your party to shut up. So yeah, it's go for 55 as a vote limit. But yeah, and don't talk about court packing. The pro-life Democrats will vote against the Democrats if you talk about packing the court, because packing the court to them means not touching Dobbs. Okay, although the cat's out of the bag for that too. I mean, it's they've caught the car, so maybe they, but now it's mostly an abortion law that they're afraid of. So maybe the court's not as important, but still, don't talk about packing it. People get nervous who are on the line, including Catholic male Democratic pro-lifers. The people who decided not to go vote, which is why we have Trump as president, and why we had Trump as president the first time, because Hillary talked about the issue of partial birth abortion rather than saying, Donald, it's illegal. You're an idiot. Instead of doing that, she said, oh, partial birth abortion might be a good thing. I mean, I'm sure they hacked her to know she was weak on that, or they had good intelligence, but it was not a good thing for her to say. Barack said, let's come to a deal. And it scared the pro-lifers, scared the shit out of them. That's why we had a FOCA thing where they, put together their mailing list for the 2010 elections by making people think that there was going to be an abortion law. And of course, Kamala mentions an abortion law, saying, I'll sign it. No, Kamala should have said that the only way to settle this is to have a compromise piece of legislation. We are willing to talk. Because that's the answer, is to have, leave legal early term abortion in place, and if a child can be born, then fetal hospice, because nobody likes the slice and dice method, unless the child is already dead. The thought of stopping a fetal heart with potassium chloride is a painful thing, even if the child can't apprehend the pain, and if God takes the child before the pain exists. Still, it's cruel looking. Shooting anything in the chest with potassium chloride, it's just nasty. It's a horrible way to die. It's why we don't do executions by lethal injection anymore. So yeah, let's fetal hospice instead. Let the child be born. Those who are religious should baptize it, and the Catholic Church should not object to this, and then let the child die. Because here's the thing for all you people who talk about, fetal, treating unborn people in early term deliveries. To do that is an extraordinary measure. Extraordinary measures are not required to keep somebody alive. You never have to intubate anybody, and unless there's a chance. There's a chance you shouldn't intubate them. Natural death means letting people die sometimes, including the unborn. Let them die, especially if you're having them doing fetal hospice because somebody's got a problem that's going to plague. I mean, Down syndrome people are the best people on earth. if they're raised with love. They're the most loving people on earth. If they're especially if they're in a loving household. So yeah, I'm all for them being born and brought to term. But if somebody's like got another defect, then that's dangerous to the mother, that could kill the mother. And there are those, that there are those defects, genetic defects which go beyond the blood-brain barrier and could kill the mother. Yeah, those should be immediate. Pregnancy should be immediately, brought out. So, but it should be negotiated. Not, we're going to win big, because nobody's going to win big on either side. We're stuck with a 50-50 nation if this issue keeps being allowed to fester. So yeah, go for a compromise, and then we can maybe have something for some way to have some consensus. Let's see. So yeah, don't talk about court packing. And that dovetails into the DSA thing. The only way for DSA to actually do anything, well, first of all, most members of DSA are crypto social democrats. They want free tuition in college. They want student loans forgiven. Those are all social democratic things. They're not, about central planning. Vladimir Putin is central planning. The Republicans love central planning. They've got a defense industry, big oil. That's all central planning. That's all industrial. Tariffs, that's all industrial policy. And the Republicans love it all. They're worse than the Soviets. They're worse than Putin. And they love their Putin, who's a KGB colonel with the same kind of police state that he ever was part of in Russia. People who are afraid of the old Soviet Union now like Russia the way it is, even though it's the old Soviet Union. So yeah, MAGA really wants social democracy. They don't want a Soviet-style system. You just gotta let them be a little unwoke for now. Like, you can educate them later on race and on gender, especially. Again, go back to solving abortion with fetal hospice. You will de-escalate MAGA in a big way, because a lot of MAGA people are pro-life people. They're not just racists. They're also pro-lifers. And if you offer a strong, let's make a compromise, let's increase the child tax credit, let's make it refundable through wages, collect it, a good economic plan that mirrors mine, frankly, MAGA would love it. So would the Social Democrats, because it makes sure every family's got enough, and they get it through their employers or their social benefits without having to file a tax form, which means a lot of people don't get it, who need it. So yeah, and it just makes it's easier for people. It doesn't help tax advisors, but those are people who are earning extra income anyway. We should find something else for them to do so they don't oppose it. Like helping small businesses. Small businesses will still have to fill out all the forms, because if they're employers, and there's plenty of those. But yeah. But anyway, on dealing with anything but party unity in the Democrats, don't talk about it till 2029. I know the media loves to look for things, but the Democratic Party leadership should realize that yes, there will be issues on which there will probably be two parties, but let MAGA and DSA join forces first, so that there actually are two parties rather than which mean different things, and then have stuff happen, unless, of course, the corporate owners of the media don't want real change. So, okay, so let's talk about real change and what people should shut up about. People need to shut up about state, the Senate representing land. It doesn't. It represents governments. We have a Senate because governments in small states need a voice. Now, I think senators should be appointed by their governors, and there should probably be only one of them per state. But this is so we don't empower the governors too much. So and now it's popularly elected, and which is good for democracy, even if our democracy is broken. But that's a symptom, not a. And it's a symptom because of capitalism. But we can't stop capitalism until we actually just put the people who are concerned about the children and the people who are concerned about the children after they're born, put them together in the same party, and then so yeah, we need states to be small enough so that people can actually go to their government and be part of it. Go to their capital and talk. If you have huge states, and you can't do that. So we can't make the states any smaller. But we can't get rid of them either. Now let's talk about the Electoral College. And the only way to get Electoral College reform is by going district by district, so that the Republicans have skin in the game. So if every district had voted individually, then everybody would, members of candidates would have to go everywhere, because there'd be Democrats in California, or Republicans in California, and Democrats in New York, or Republicans in New York. That's both places, or Democrats in Texas. There are red states or pseudo red states that get into play. Democrats in Florida. There's plenty of places in Florida where you could have Democrats get electoral votes. And then on this state compact thing, one vote should go to the one of the at-large votes should go to the state winner, and the other should go to the national winner. But there need to be both. Especially if you fragment electoral votes to the congressional district level. Of course, regional government's better than if you have regions each with 2 members of a national caucus and the regional vice president. Then you wouldn't have to have a national election. You'd have a functioning electoral college, and you would never get anybody like Trump. Okay, have we learned our lesson yet? Have we? Can we please? So, yeah, that's instead of just worrying about the trappings of democracy, let's try to prevent tyranny. That would be how to do it. 6 or 7 regions of equal electoral vote value. I think it's now 6 to have a decent share of the world's population in each region, and have them 2 senators every 6 years and 1 regional vice president every 6 years, and just pick a president every 2 years by that body instead of having it by a national election. No Trump would ever be elected again. So, finally, my other pet peeve: the debt. The debt should not be a GDP event. It should not be a percentage. A percentage of GDP doesn't make any difference. The unwillingness of the Republicans to fund the debt sometimes, that's a problem. The unwillingness of the Republicans to adequately raise taxes on the wealthy is a problem. That's why I'm being downgraded. That's why there's a problem. People think, oh my God, we're never going to pay it off. We've got to raise taxes on capital gains, dividends, and corporations and pass-through entities, so that we have enough revenue so that people don't worry about the size of our debt. And let's talk about net interest too, because people talk about this big net interest bill. Net interest funds capitalism. Net interest goes into accounts that are then leveraged to form capitalism. The reason the deficit being so big is a problem is because we're giving too much liquidity to capitalists, and not just the capitalists of GM. I'm talking about the nuts. and the people who are so, who love who love the idea of crypto, or the idea of the kind of AI we have, which is stupid. You know, we can do so much better with AI. If, people who get laid occasionally, who understand the cognitive functions, rather than trying to like think it's all bandwidth. It's not all bandwidth. There are 9 cognitive functions, and if you replicate them, you will get useful AIs for individuals, and not have some kind of singularity or some kind of, it's an impossible dream. You know, make it serviceable for the individual, make it be easy to do, use access to a lot of information, and not steal anybody's copyrighted work. To build some model based on language and scraping, and that stuff is crap. So yeah, and those people, those 5 big AI people, were in an arms race to the bottom. Once it's realized that this is a problem, the thing's going to crash again, because there's too much money in it, because the rich people aren't paying enough taxes. Neither are businesses. If the big 5 paid more in corporate taxes, I promise you wouldn't have such speculation. If there wouldn't be speculation on crypto or AI or mortgage bonds. All things that are crap. The money is going to crap, and when crap finally clogs the toilet, then you have general economic chaos, and it's bad things and depressions, and we should stop doing that. The way to stop doing that is to raise taxes on the wealthy. And if it happens, the way out of the recession is to raise taxes on the wealthy so people can consume. That's really, taxes on employers are too small, and especially the wealthy. We should fix them, and if we do that, we can have some kind of stable consensus, and there's again enough money for families with children, and just a decent political system. Right now we don't have one, and we could. And I know I've said all of this before, but I haven't done this in a while, so reminder time, because if the same stories are on top line, enough people aren't listening, so I'm going to speak again. Hopefully people will actually watch this video. If they do, comment, like, share, make this a movement for sanity, please, because it's just sad to watch the news now, which I'm going to go do in about 20 minutes. So I'm not posting this right away, so it's 20 minutes from when I recorded this thing. I'm not going to post this for hours. So happy Thursday.